Welcome to the Power Book of Podcasts. Unlock your potential with powerful book summaries that inspire personal growth and broaden your understanding of the world. Each week, we explore life-changing ideas, from leadership to mindset strategies to keys for happiness and success. Learn actionable insights to apply in your daily life. Join our growing community of thinkers and seekers. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button now. It's time to supercharge your mind with the Power Book of Podcasts.
All right, let's jump into this deep dive into The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Oh yeah, this one's a classic.
Yeah, it's not your typical business book. It's not like all these feel-good quotes.
Right.
It's like Ben just sat down and told you everything he's learned from building companies like Netscape.
Yeah, and Andreessen Horowitz, his venture capital firm.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's been in the trenches. He's got the scars to prove it.
Right. And so one of the things that's so fascinating about this book is he doesn't shy away from the fact that things will go wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in the world of startups.
Yeah.
It's not about being negative. It's just being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, look, this stuff's going to happen.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he actually uses this analogy of a tough football coach.
Yeah, I love that.
Who just, pushes you to your absolute limit.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, building a company is kind of like that.
Absolutely. It demands that same level of resilience.
Right.
And that leads to one of the most interesting points, I think, in the entire book. It's his emphasis on honesty.
Yeah.
Like, even when it's hard, like brutal honesty.
Yeah, he actually says that one of the biggest improvements he made as a CEO was when he stopped sugarcoating things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, well, you would think you'd want to, protect your team.
Right, shield them from negativity.
But by doing that, you're actually preventing them from really learning and growing.
Yeah, or feeling like they're really part of solving the problems.
Yeah, he says it creates a culture of distrust.
Yeah.
And prevents people from actually stepping up and...
Yeah, and addressing the underlying issues.
Totally.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
What do you think? Have you ever experienced that in the workplace?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I've definitely been in situations where information was withheld.
Right.
And it just made everything worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are just kind of walking around what's going on?
Yeah, and it makes it hard to make decisions.
Right, exactly.
When you're not sure what the whole picture is.
Exactly.
So... yeah, I mean, that's one of the big takeaways, I think, from this book is just how important that open communication is.
Absolutely. And, he doesn't stop there. He goes on and he talks about, the really tough stuff, like firing people.
Yeah, it's a big one, especially firing executives.
Oh, especially firing executives.
He actually points out that this is a mistake that companies make a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They hire someone who's too big for the role.
Right.
It's like you're thinking ahead.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we need someone who can manage a huge team and a complex budget.
Right, yeah.
But if they can't handle the day-to-day stuff...
the immediate demand...
it could backfire.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like hiring a 5-star chef.
Yeah.
To, run a food truck.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
They may have the skills.
Right.
But they may not be able to operate.
In that environment.
Yeah, in that environment.
And then you're faced with, okay, now I have to fire this person that I was so excited to hire.
Right, I know, it's so awkward.
But he walks you through that whole process, how to have those tough conversations and do it with grace, with honesty.
Minimize the damage.
Yeah.
But also be direct.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the other things I thought was really interesting was his concept of lead bullets.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Which comes from his experience at Netscape when they were competing with Microsoft.
Oh, talk about pressure.
I mean, it's I can't even imagine.
You got this tech giant breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
It's got to be intense.
He was feeling really overwhelmed with all these different things they could do and all this pressure to change their product.
Yeah.
And he realized, you know what? We need to just focus on the one thing
that's going to have the biggest impact.
And he called that the lead bullet.
Yeah.
Strategy.
And it's so applicable, even if you're not running a tech company.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we all have limited time and resources.
Yeah.
So we have to be strategic about where we focus our energy.
Exactly.
Are you trying to do too many things at once?
Right.
Or are you laser focused on what really matters?
Right. And for them, the lead bullet was focusing on performance improvements.
For their web server.
Their web server.
Yeah.
Which allowed them to, you know, stay competitive.
Yeah.
Even though they were still exploring other options.
Right.
Now, one thing I really appreciated about the book, you know, he's not all about hardcore business tactics.
Right.
He also talks about this idea of building a good company.
Yeah.
And not just from the standpoint of technology.
Right. He's very focused on the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Making sure that people feel valued and that they're part of something meaningful.
Yeah, he tells this really interesting story about his experience with Go Corporation, which was a company he started that ultimately failed. But even though the company didn't succeed, the employees consistently said it was a great place to work.
Because of the culture, yeah.
Because of the culture and the leadership.
That's so important.
It's something to think about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even when things don't go as planned.
It's how you treat people.
Yeah.
That matters.
Yeah.
It's about creating a positive and supportive work environment.
Right.
And that's not just good for morale. It's good for business.
Absolutely. But then, of course, things get more complicated as companies grow.
As you scale,
right,
things get more complex.
Yeah, he acknowledges that.
Yeah.
The informal approaches that might have worked in a small startup
don't always translate.
Don't always work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he brings up the importance of process.
Process.
Which, you know, when you hear the word process, you might think bureaucracy.
Yeah, red tape.
Red tape.
But he sees it differently.
Right.
He sees process as a communication tool, essential for maintaining efficiency and alignment.
Right. So it's not about stifling creativity.
No, it's about enabling it.
Yeah.
It's about making sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. And he uses this great example.
Oh, what's that?
Of like developing a robust hiring process.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine your company's growing really fast.
You're bringing new people in every week.
Yeah. So how do you make sure
that you're hiring the right people?
That you're hiring the right people consistently.
For the right roles.
For the right roles.
And that you're being fair.
Yeah.
You know, you need a system.
Right. You need
a clear, well-defined process.
Yeah. And even if you're not in a huge company, even if you're in a small team,
yeah,
it's good to think about the processes that you have.
Absolutely.
And are they clear?
Are they scalable?
Are they scalable?
Can they grow with you?
Yeah. Now, he also doesn't shy away from kind of controversial topics.
Yeah, like what?
He goes into this whole thing about, like, how do you evaluate a CEO?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Especially when things are really tough.
Right.
Right? Like, how do you measure success?
When the world is changing so fast.
Exactly.
So he actually provides these criteria to kind of help you evaluate objectively the CEO's performance.
And he boils it down to 3 questions, right?
Yeah. Does the CEO know what to do? Can they get the company to do it?
Right.
And did they achieve the desired results?
Right. And then he goes into this whole fascinating concept of,
oh, yeah. Love this one.
Wartime CEOs versus peacetime CEOs.
Wartime and peacetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Which we'll definitely have to explore more.
We'll dive into that.
But yeah, I mean, he talks about the fact that
sometimes you need a leader who can make those tough decisions.
Right.
Under pressure.
Right, under pressure.
Yeah.
And then speaking of pressure, he tells this crazy story.
Oh, yeah. What's this one?
About an accounting issue that almost derailed the sale of Opsware to HP.
Way.
Oh, yeah. It's like something out of a movie.
Like everything's going great.
Yeah, everything's going great. And then all of a sudden this massive obstacle appears.
Oh, man. That's got to be stressful.
Oh, it's just the way he describes it is just so vivid. You can just feel the tension.
So how did they get through it?
Well, that's a story for part 2.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either.
I'm hooked.
I know, me too.
So that accounting nightmare during the Opsware sale, it really highlights something that happens a lot in startups. Sometimes there are no rules.
You just got to make your own.
Yeah, you got to be creative.
It felt like such a betrayal. You know, Ernst & Young, their accounting firm.
Right.
They were supposed to be helping them, you know, navigate the sale.
Yeah.
And they ended up creating this massive, totally avoidable obstacle.
Talk about a curveball.
Yeah.
It's like you think you've got everything under control, and then, bam, something like this happens.
And I was so impressed with how Horowitz just handled it. You know, he didn't waste time complaining. It's like, okay, this is the situation.
Yep.
The sky is purple. What do we do?
Got to find a way forward.
Exactly. And he talks about this idea of accountability versus creativity.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's like this constant balancing act for leaders.
Right, because you want to hold people accountable, but you also want to encourage them to be creative.
To take risks.
To think outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's finding that sweet spot.
He says it's not just about holding people accountable for, you know, effort or promises made.
Right.
It's about holding them accountable for the actual results.
The results, yeah. And I think that's really important, especially when you're dealing with complex problems.
Right, because sometimes you might make a decision that seems like the right decision at the time.
Right.
but it doesn't work out.
It doesn't pan out. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. You learn from it.
As long as you can explain your thinking.
Right. Yeah.
And the logic behind it.
It's all about the learning process, right?
That's it.
So now he goes into this really interesting concept. I love the name of it.
What's that?
He calls it the Freaky Friday management technique.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Like the movie.
Yeah, it's all about putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Interesting.
So he encourages leaders to imagine like switching roles with someone else in the company.
Okay.
It could be a junior employee. It could be a manager in a different department. It could even be the CEO.
So you're trying to see things from their perspective.
Exactly.
Bro.
And by doing that,
Yeah.
you gain a deeper understanding of their challenges, their motivations.
Their blind spots.
Yeah, and I think this is so important because it's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles
Right.
and make assumptions about how other people work or what their challenges might be.
All the time.
So this technique is a great way to break down those silos and foster empathy.
And ultimately, lead to better decision making.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that I know keeps a lot of entrepreneurs up at night.
Okay.
The question of, should I sell my company? I mean, it's a huge decision with so many factors to consider.
Right. It's not just a business decision.
It's an emotional one, too.
Yeah, very emotional.
So he breaks it down into like the analytical side and the emotional side. On the analytical side, you're looking at, things like product market fit.
Market size.
Yeah, competition, the potential for future growth.
Right, all those things.
But then there's the emotional side.
You poured your heart and soul into this company.
You built it from scratch.
Yeah.
It's your baby.
And the thought of letting go, I mean, it's so difficult.
It can be really hard.
Yeah.
And he also gives some practical advice. Like, he says, make sure you're taking a salary as CEO.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Because if you're not,
right,
your personal financial situation might cloud your judgment.
Right, yeah. It's like you need to be objective.
You need to be able to make the decision.
Without that pressure.
That's best for the company.
Exactly.
Not just for your own wallet.
And also, he talks about being transparent with your employees.
Yeah, about your long-term vision for the company.
Right. If you're constantly dodging questions about, are we going to sell? It just creates this atmosphere of uncertainty.
And distrust.
Yeah.
Which is not good for morale.
Not good for morale.
So be upfront with people.
Right.
Let them know what you're thinking.
Even if it's, I don't know yet.
Yeah, it's okay to say, I don't know yet.
Exactly.
But I'm thinking about these things.
Right.
Here are the factors I'm considering.
Now, he gets really candid about his own transition from founder to CEO.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah.
He talks about this time when a major investor basically told him, you're not cut out for this job.
Oh, wow.
Ouch. Imagine hearing that.
Especially from someone who's, put a lot of money into your company.
Right, someone you respect.
Yeah, and he admits that he felt inadequate.
Yeah, like he wasn't good enough.
Yeah, imposter syndrome.
And it was actually this experience that led to the creation of Andreessen Horowitz.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah, he realized that there wasn't enough support out there for technical founders who were trying to, make that transition to CEO.
Right, to become leaders.
Yeah.
And he wanted to create a firm
that would help them.
That would help them, yeah.
So it's like he took his own struggle and turned it into a mission.
And that authenticity really comes through in the book.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't shy away from his mistakes.
No, he owns them.
He talks about this funny story.
Yeah, I love that one.
About how he used to curse like a sailor in company meetings.
Oh, yeah. He's like, I was dropping F-bombs left and right.
He didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And then people started complaining. And he was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was doing that.
Right.
But instead of getting defensive, he was like, okay, I need to change.
Right.
And it's a good reminder that good leadership involves being self-aware.
Open to feedback.
Yeah.
And willing to adapt.
Yeah. Even if it means confronting your own blind spots.
Your blind spots, absolutely.
And, we talked about the importance of building a good company. And he really emphasizes that it's not just about financial success.
Right.
It's about creating a positive work environment.
Where people feel valued.
Yeah, where they feel respected, motivated.
Yeah.
He calls it taking care of the people. And he learned this from Bill Campbell.
Right, his mentor.
Yeah, the legendary coach.
Who mentored so many Silicon Valley CEOs.
Yeah, like Steve Jobs.
Yeah, and Campbell believed that building a good company was an end in itself.
Even if the company failed.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like, If the culture was strong, if the leadership was good, that experience is still valuable for the employees.
It's not just about the outcome.
It's about the journey.
The journey, right?
And how you treat people along the way.
And that brings us to training.
Oh, yeah. He's a big believer in investing in employee development. And he says training is the boss's job.
Not just HR.
Not just HR, yeah.
Okay.
He admits that early in his career, he was skeptical of training programs. He found them too generic, too boring.
Not tailored to the specific needs.
Right. But then at Netscape, he decided to create his own training for product managers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he wrote this document called Good Product Manager, Bad Product Manager.
I've heard of this, yeah.
And it was a huge success.
What kind of results did he see?
The performance of his team improved dramatically.
Wow.
And he realized the power of, clear expectations, targeted training, and investing in his people.
Right, yeah, it shows you care.
Yeah, people want to work for companies that invest in them.
Absolutely.
That give them opportunities to learn and grow.
It's not just about the paycheck.
Right.
Right, it's about feeling valued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just functional skills.
Right.
It could be leadership development, communication skills, negotiation, finance, like all sorts of things.
Anything that helps them grow as individuals.
Right.
Right.
And he even suggests, tapping into the talent you already have in your company. Have your top performers lead workshops.
Right.
Or mentor others.
Yeah.
So win-win.
It creates a culture of learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got a great team. You're investing in their training.
What's next?
What's next? Hiring.
Ah, yes. Hiring. He's got some strong opinions on this one.
I bet he does.
One thing he cautions against is automatically assuming that executives from big companies will be a good fit for startups.
Yeah, you would think so, right?
Yeah, because they've managed large teams.
They've got the experience.
Yeah, complex budgets.
They've navigated corporate politics. They've seen it all.
Right.
But he makes this really interesting point.
What's that?
That the skills needed to run a massive company are very different from the skills needed to build something from scratch.
It's a different beast.
Yeah, it's a different beast.
And remember the wartime CEO versus peacetime CEO thing?
Right, yeah.
Big company executives are used to peacetime. They're used to stability.
Structure.
Yeah, process.
Yeah.
Startups need someone who can thrive in wartime.
Right.
Someone who can handle chaos.
You can make decisions quickly.
Yeah, who could adapt.
Yeah, it's a different rhythm.
He calls it a rhythm mismatch.
Mismatch.
And there's also a skill set mismatch.
Right.
Big company execs might be great at organizational design.
Yeah, process improvement.
Communication to a large workforce.
Yeah, but those aren't the skills you need.
In the early stages of a startup.
Right. Yeah. It's like in a startup, you need someone who can build a team from scratch.
Create process where none existed before.
Right.
It's a different animal.
It's like transplanting a flower from a greenhouse.
Ooh, I like that.
To the wild.
Yeah.
It might be a beautiful flower.
Right.
But it needs to be able to survive.
In a harsh environment.
Yeah. And he doesn't just warn against hiring the wrong people.
He gives you a blueprint.
For hiring the right people.
For how to do it right.
Yeah.
He lays out this whole process, define clear criteria, ask the right questions.
Thorough reference checks.
Yeah, he even suggests CEOs should personally conduct reference checks.
Oh, wow.
For key hires.
It shows you care.
It shows you care.
Yeah.
You're invested in the process.
It's not something you just delegate.
Right.
You're really taking ownership.
Yeah, and he emphasizes finding people who are passionate about your mission.
Right.
Not just in it for the paycheck.
Or a fancy title.
Yeah, you want people who are truly bought in.
Yeah, who believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like assembling a puzzle. Each piece needs to fit.
To create that complete picture.
Exactly.
Okay, and then he gets into, one of the hardest parts of leadership, which is giving feedback.
Oh, yeah. Nobody likes to have difficult conversations.
Especially when it's negative feedback.
Right. But they're essential for growth.
Right. Yeah, you got to give people feedback if you want them to improve.
But it's so easy to do it wrong.
Right.
And end up demotivating someone.
Or damaging your relationship with them.
Yeah, he actually debunks this common technique.
Oh, which one?
The shit sandwich.
Oh, yeah, the shit sandwich?
Yeah, where you try to cushion the blow.
Right, you say something nice, then you give the negative feedback.
And then you end with something nice again.
Right, yeah, it's like trying to hide a bitter pill in a spoonful of sugar.
Yeah, and he says it doesn't really work.
No, it's inauthentic.
It is.
People can see right through it.
Especially experienced employees.
So what's the alternative?
He says you need to develop a feedback style that's genuine.
Right.
and aligned with your personality and values.
Yeah. Okay.
So be clear, be direct, focus on the behavior, not the person.
The behavior, not the person.
And remember, feedback shouldn't be a one-time event.
Right. It's an ongoing dialogue.
It is.
Regular one-on-ones.
Yeah, where you can provide feedback,
Yeah, for support.
discuss career development.
Right.
And he also cautions against public shaming.
Oh, yeah. Never do that.
Never do that, yeah.
Criticizing someone in front of their peers.
It just creates fear and resentment.
Right. Yeah.
So feedback should be a private, respectful conversation
Yeah.
aimed at helping the person improve.
Yeah. Not humiliating them.
And here's a key point. Feedback is a two-way street.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Leaders should be open to hearing feedback from their employees.
Absolutely. Even if it's negative.
Even if it's negative.
Yeah.
Because you don't have all the answers.
Right.
And your employees often have valuable insights.
They're on the front lines.
They are.
They see things that you don't see.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about hiring. We've talked about feedback.
Now let's talk about culture.
Culture. Everybody's talking about culture.
Yeah, it's a buzzword.
What's his take on it?
He's got some interesting insights.
Okay.
He doesn't believe in relying on gimmicks.
Like free snacks,
Yeah, ping pong tables,
beanbag chairs.
all that stuff.
Those are just perks.
Those are perks, not culture.
Not culture.
A truly effective company culture runs much deeper. It's about establishing core values
Values.
that guide every decision, every interaction.
Every aspect of the business.
Yeah, and he believes one of the best ways to instill these values
Oh, okay.
is through shock value.
Shock value. Interesting.
So what he means by that is introducing elements into the culture that are so unusual,
Okay.
so thought-provoking.
Like they make people stop and think.
Yeah, make people stop and think.
Okay.
Like, think about Amazon's early practice
Yeah.
of using doors as desks.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that.
It's so quirky,
Yeah.
but it served a deeper purpose.
Right.
It reinforced Jeff Bezos' obsession with frugality
And customer focus.
and customer focus.
Yeah.
So every time an employee sat down at their door desk, they were reminded of those values.
So it's not just about being different for the sake of being different. It's about finding ways to make your values tangible and visible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he contrasts this with, like, the more superficial elements of culture.
Right.
Like the dogs at work policy or having yoga classes.
Right.
Those could be nice perks,
They're nice.
but they don't necessarily define your culture.
They don't get at the core values.
No.
Okay, so how do you go about defining those core values?
He encourages leaders to think critically about what they want their culture to represent.
Okay.
How do you want people to behave? How do you want decisions to be made?
What kind of impact do you want to have
What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
on the world? Right.
And once you have a clear understanding of your values, you can find ways to weave them into every aspect of the company.
From hiring to onboarding to
Performance reviews.
customer interaction.
In the whole 9 yards.
It's an ongoing process.
It is.
Okay, so now as companies grow, they face these challenges with scaling.
Right. What worked when you were a small startup might not work when you have hundreds or thousands of employees.
Right.
And he acknowledges these growing pains. He emphasizes the importance of organizational design
Right.
and process.
To maintain alignment and effectiveness as the company grows.
But he also says something that might surprise you.
Okay.
He says all organizational designs are bad.
What? How can they all be bad?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
It does.
But he explains that any structure you choose will inevitably create communication challenges.
Between certain departments.
Yeah, there's no perfect solution.
Okay.
It's all about trade-offs.
So if all organizational designs are flawed in some way, how do you choose the right one?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Well, he provides this step-by-step process
Right.
for creating an organizational structure that supports your goals and minimizes communication breakdowns.
Okay.
So think about specialization. Define clear roles and responsibilities.
Right.
Establish a clear chain of command.
Okay.
And most importantly, regularly reevaluate your organizational design.
Okay.
Because what worked when you had 50 employees
Right.
might not work when you have 500.
Exactly. You got to be flexible.
Adapt.
Yeah. And then he goes into, in addition to organizational design, he talks about the importance of process.
Process, always process.
Right. Yeah.
He sees process not as bureaucratic red tape, but as a vital communication tool
Okay.
that enables companies to scale effectively.
So it's about making things run smoothly.
Yeah, and he emphasizes that the purpose of process is to facilitate communication, not to stifle creativity or slow things down.
Right. So it's not about creating a bunch of rules for the sake of having rules.
No, it's about creating a framework.
That helps people do their best work.
Exactly.
Okay.
He gives the example of developing a robust hiring process again.
Right.
As your company grows, you need to bring on more and more people.
Yeah.
A clear hiring process ensures that you're consistently hiring the right people.
And that everyone's treated fairly.
Yeah. It's about creating a system that works,
That's scalable.
that embodies the values of your company.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about building a company, hiring the right people, creating a strong culture, but we haven't really talked about what it takes to lead.
The actual act of leading.
Yeah, and that brings us to one of the most crucial aspects of the book, evaluating performance.
Especially when it comes to your executive team.
Especially when it comes to your executive team.
Yeah. I mean, how do you assess someone's leadership capabilities?
When everything is moving so fast.
Everything's moving so fast and the stakes are so high.
Yeah. Well, he highlights that managing at scale is a learned skill.
It's not something you're born with.
It's not something you're born with, yeah.
Okay.
So just because someone is great at leading a small team doesn't mean they'll automatically excel.
When they're responsible for 1,000 people.
Right.
So you can't just assume that someone will step up and handle a larger role.
You can't just assume that. No, you have to evaluate their potential.
And provide support.
And provide support and development opportunities.
Right.
And he also cautions against making premature judgments about someone's ability to scale.
Right.
You can't really know for sure.
Until they're in that situation.
Right.
And he warns against hiring what he calls scalable execs too early.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
So that's bringing in someone who's really good at managing a large organization before you actually need that skill set.
Before you need it.
Right. So they may not be the right fit for the company's current stage.
Right.
And their lack of hands-on experience.
Could actually be a liability.
Could actually be a liability, yeah.
So how do you evaluate CEOs and executives?
Right.
He suggests this three-pronged approach.
Okay.
Focusing on what he calls white box evaluation criteria.
White box. Okay, what's that?
So he's talking about looking beyond just the end results, which he considers to be a lagging indicator.
Okay.
So instead, he focuses on two key questions. Does the CEO know what to do?
Okay.
Meaning, do they have a solid understanding of strategy, decision-making, the market?
Right.
And then the second question is, can they get the company to do what they know?
Okay.
Meaning, do they have the leadership skills, the ability to execute?
Right, to build a team.
To build a team, to motivate people.
Right. So it's not just about the outcome.
It's about the process.
It's about the process and the leadership style.
Exactly.
It makes sense, but it also seems really difficult to assess those things objectively.
It does require a more nuanced approach. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about this really gripping story he tells about a time when his company, Loud Cloud, was on the verge of collapse.
Oh, wow. During the dot-com bust?
During the dot-com bust.
Yeah, that must have been intense.
It was a crazy time.
Yeah.
The company was bleeding cash. Investors were pulling out.
Right.
And Horowitz was desperately trying to raise funding.
Just to keep the lights on.
Just to keep the lights on.
Yeah, I remember that part of the book. He's so honest about
the fear.
The doubt.
Yeah.
The loneliness.
The loneliness of it all.
Yeah, and the pressure.
Yeah, it's like, it's not all glamorous.
No, it's not.
Being a CEO, it's tough.
It's really tough.
And in that moment of crisis, who did he turn to? He called his mentor, Bill Campbell.
Oh, wow.
And, Campbell had been through his own share of battles. So he listened to Horowitz pour out his anxieties.
Yeah.
And then he just said one word.
What was it?
Spiral.
Just spiral.
Just spiral.
What did he mean by that?
And it was like a moment of clarity for Horowitz. He realized the company was caught in this downward spiral.
Right. So declining cash reserves were eroding customer confidence.
Which was hurting sale.
Which was further depleting their cash.
Yeah, it was a vicious cycle.
A vicious cycle.
And he knew if he didn't act fast,
the company was doomed.
The company was doomed.
So what did he do?
He explored every option.
Okay.
He even considered merging with a competitor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but even as he was pursuing that deal, he was wrestling with his doubts.
Yeah, it's got to be tough.
It is.
Yeah.
And then he was on vacation.
He's trying to escape all this pressure.
Yeah, he's trying to get away. And he gets a call from John O'Farrell.
Who's that?
His VP of operations.
Okay.
And O'Farrell had been analyzing the merger deal, and he didn't think it was a good idea.
Oh, wow. Their only lifeline.
Yeah.
And he's saying don't do it.
Yeah, he argued that merging two struggling companies wouldn't solve the underlying problems.
Right.
It would just create a bigger mess.
Let me make a mess.
Yeah.
So he had to go against like what seemed like the obvious solution.
Yeah, and it was a tough call.
Yeah.
But he trusted his VP, and he decided to abandon the merger.
Okay.
And instead, they decided to pivot the business.
Oh, wow.
They laid off a significant portion of their workforce.
Oh, that's got to be hard.
It was a painful decision.
Yeah.
But they focused on a completely new market.
Okay.
It was a risky move,
right?
But it ultimately saved the company.
It saved the company. Wow.
Yeah.
So sometimes
It's amazing how sometimes, the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. Yeah, it's like, you think you have to go with the obvious answer, but sometimes the best path is the one less traveled.
Yeah. It's like you got to be open to those different perspectives.
Absolutely. And you got to trust your team.
Right. Yeah. You got to have people that you can rely on.
Who can challenge your thinking.
Push you outside of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And that really highlights something interesting about Horowitz's leadership style.
What's that?
He's not afraid to make tough decisions.
Even when they're unpopular.
Yeah. Even when they go against conventional wisdom.
He's willing to adapt.
He's willing to change course.
Do whatever it takes to survive.
To succeed.
And that leads to one of my favorite lines from the book.
Yeah, what is it?
Startup CEOs should not play the odds. They should defy them.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, it really captures that entrepreneurial spirit.
It's like you're not just accepting the limitations.
You're pushing boundaries.
You're finding solutions where other people see obstacles.
And you're believing in the impossible.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did with Loudcloud.
He defied the odds. He pivoted the business.
Led the company to a successful acquisition.
Yeah, it's incredibly inspiring.
Right.
It shows that even when you're facing these huge challenges,
there's always hope.
As long as you have the courage to adapt.
To persevere.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Horowitz is really focused on minimizing politics within a company.
Yeah, I think that's something that every leader struggles with.
Especially as the organization grows.
Yeah, it's like, how do you keep things from getting too political?
Well, he outlines two key strategies.
Okay, what are they?
First, hire people with the right kind of ambition.
So not the cutthroat, climb the ladder at all costs type?
No, not that kind.
Okay.
He wants people who are ambitious, but their ambition is aligned with the company's success.
So they're motivated by the right things.
Exactly.
But even with the best intentions, conflicts can still arise.
Yeah, especially when you have a group of talented, ambitious people working together.
Right.
So his second strategy is to establish strict processes for handling potentially political issues.
Like promotions?
Yeah, performance reviews.
And organizational design, all that stuff.
Yeah, by creating clear, objective criteria and a transparent process, you can minimize the opportunity for, subjective judgments and political maneuvering.
So it's about taking the emotion out of it.
Yeah, and making sure everyone feels like they're being treated fairly.
Okay, so minimizing office politics, but what about the politics of, titles and promotions?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That can be a real source of tension.
Yeah, he actually talks about the Peter Principle.
Oh, what's that?
The idea that people tend to be promoted to their level of incompetence.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
So you're good at your current job, you get promoted.
And then you end up in a role you're not equipped for.
Yeah, and it can create a lot of frustration.
Resentment.
Yeah.
And then he also discusses this. I love the name of this. The law of crappy people.
The law of crappy people.
Yeah.
What is that?
He says that the talent on any given level in an organization will eventually converge to the level of the crappiest person with that title.
Oh, that's a little depressing.
It is, but it's kind of true, right?
Yeah, I've seen it happen.
So if titles and promotions are so problematic,
what's the solution?
What do you do?
Well, he advocates for a rigorous, well-defined promotion process.
Okay.
That focuses on objective criteria and ensures everyone is evaluated fairly.
Right.
And he also talks about this debate.
About?
How big titles should be within a company.
Right. Do you have a hierarchy filled with presidents and chiefs?
Senior vice presidents.
Or do you follow a more egalitarian approach?
Yeah, where titles are less important.
Right, like at Facebook, I think?
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is famous for that.
Right.
It's all about finding the right balance.
Recognizing achievement.
Fostering a collaborative environment.
Okay, and then there's the challenge of, those smart but bad employees.
Oh yeah, those are tough.
Like the talented individuals who just don't fit in.
Or they end up creating more problems than they solve.
Right, it's like that saying, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
Yeah, and he talks about different types of these employees, like the heretic.
Okay, what's the heretic?
The brilliant employee who constantly finds fault with the company.
Oh, yeah.
And undermines morale.
What about the flake?
The flake, yeah. The one who's super talented but completely unreliable.
I've definitely worked with a few of those.
And then there's the jerk.
Okay.
The high-performing but toxic employee.
Right, yeah, I know that one.
Who creates a hostile work environment.
Yeah.
And he says, sometimes you just have to make tough decisions about these employees.
Even if they're brilliant.
Even if they're brilliant.
Or high-performing.
Because at the end of the day, a company is a team effort.
Yeah.
And one person's behavior can have a ripple effect.
It can bring everyone down.
Yeah, and he actually tells this great story.
What?
About the football coach, John Madden.
Oh, yeah, I love John Madden.
Who was once asked if he would tolerate a player like Terrell Owens on his team.
Oh, yeah, Terrell Owens. He was so talented.
Super talented wide receiver.
But also known for being a bit of a diva.
Yeah, creating drama.
Yeah.
And Madden's response was classic.
What did he say?
He said, if you hold the bus for everyone on the team, then you'll be so late you'll miss the game. So you can't do that. The bus must leave on time. However, sometimes you'll have a player that's so good that you hold the bus for him, but only him.
I love that.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah, it illustrates the point that you can't make exceptions for everyone.
Right.
You gotta have standards.
And be willing to enforce them.
Yeah, even if it means letting go of a talented but disruptive employee.
And that leads to a really important point he makes.
About
setting a high bar for performance.
Especially for your executive team.
Especially for your executive team.
Yeah. If you want to build a great company, you need to surround yourself with exceptional people.
Yeah, and that might mean making tough decisions.
About people you like.
People who've been with the company a long time.
Right, but it's about putting the company's interests first.
And recognizing that sometimes the most difficult decisions
are the most necessary.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of being clear about your expectations, providing regular feedback.
Creating a culture of excellence.
Now, one of the most intriguing and maybe controversial aspects of his philosophy.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
Is this idea of a cult-like company culture.
Right, right. We touched on this earlier.
And I know that word cult.
Yeah, it can make people uncomfortable.
It can, but I think what he's getting at is this idea creating an environment where people are really passionate. About the company's mission and values.
So it's not about blind obedience.
No, it's not about brainwashing people.
Okay.
It's about fostering a sense of shared purpose.
Okay.
Deep commitment.
I think that's what sets great companies apart.
Absolutely. It's not just about having a great product or a smart strategy.
It's about the culture.
It's about the culture.
The people.
The people, yeah.
And so as we wrap up this deep dive into the hard thing about hard things, I think, there are a few key takeaways.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
First, building a company is hard.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. There will be times when you want to give up.
You want to throw in the towel.
But it's during those tough times that you really see what you're made of.
And it's when you need to lean on your team.
Your mentors.
Yeah, remember why you started this journey.
And the second takeaway is you don't have to have all the answers.
It's okay to ask for help.
Admit when you're struggling.
Yeah, nobody expects you to be perfect.
And third, take care of your people.
Yes, build a positive, supportive culture.
Where people feel valued, respected, and motivated.
And finally, remember, there are no rules.
Be willing to challenge the status quo.
Defy the odds.
Find your own path to success.
So if you're listening to this and you haven't read The Hard Thing About Hard Things,
I highly recommend it.
It's a must-read for any entrepreneur or aspiring leader.
It's packed with wisdom, it's funny, it's brutally honest.
It will definitely make you think.
So that's it for our deep dive.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
We did. I hope you enjoyed it.
I know I did. It's always fun to talk about this stuff.
Me too. And remember, the next time you're facing a challenge,
a seemingly impossible obstacle,
channel your inner Ben Horowitz
and defy the odds.
Until next time,
keep learning,
keep growing,
and keep defying the odds.